Gabe Feldman is our NFL Network legal analyst. What is Tom Brady likely to argue inside?
Well, let's consider the context of this hearing. Ted Wells' report concluded that it was more probable than not that Tom Brady was generally aware that the Patriots employees deflated the footballs. So Tom Brady and his team have to come forward in this hearing, present some new evidence or a new interpretation of old evidence to try to convince the commissioner that it's more probable than not that he was not generally aware of tampering with the footballs. And I think that's going to focus on four key questions. First is, did the Patriots employees actually tamper with the footballs? There is no smoking gun, so this is going to be a battle of the science reports. This is also going to be a battle over the interpretation of those text messages. The second question is going to be, was Tom Brady aware of any tampering? And that's difficult for Tom Brady to try to prove a negative, to try to prove that he did not know something. But this will be an opportunity for Brady to look the commissioner in the eye and say, I did not do this. The third issue, I think the key issue that's going to come up, is this failure to cooperate. Tom Brady's going to have to answer, why didn't he turn over all of his phone records? And maybe have an opportunity now to turn over those records to the commissioner. This is a really key issue because even if there's not enough evidence to show that there was tampering with the footballs, the commissioner can still suspend Tom Brady for this failure to cooperate. And this is a precedent-setting moment for the commissioner to make a clear statement to players, owners, other employees going forward. If you don't cooperate with these investigations, you will be suspended. And then finally, even if there is proof of tampering, even if there is proof that Tom Brady knew about it, even if he failed to cooperate, does the punishment fit the crime? Tom Brady can argue here that this punishment is inconsistent with punishment for previous misconduct that was similar. We don't have anything exactly like this, but we can look at cases where teams or players either cheated or failed to cooperate, and Tom Brady can argue that 4-game suspension is just too harsh. So I think those are the main arguments we'll hear during the hearing.
Okay, we saw Robert Kraft, the Patriots owner, come out and basically take his medicine, and it did seem like a precursor to cooperation. Based on that, do you think Tom Brady and his lawyers are going to go in and cooperate? Or knowing the contentious relationship between the NFLPA and especially lead attorney Jeffrey Kessler, who's going to be arguing for Brady, that they may say, hey, look, Roger Goodell, we don't want you to hear this. We're going to make this bigger than this individual case. It's the union versus the league, and you know they don't want Roger Goodell to hear appeals and say, we don't want you to hear this. We're going to take this out of the appellate process, and we're going to go to federal court.
Yeah, I think that's probably likely. I think we've seen that in previous cases, that this is not just about reducing the suspension to 1 or 2 games. I think if the suspension isn't completely overturned, I think it's, to use the language, more probable than not that the NFLPA and Tom Brady will file suit in federal court. 1, to get the suspension completely overturned, but 2, Steve, as you mentioned, to fight this bigger issue, because what's been clear since the CBA was signed in 2011, the NFL Players Association does not believe that Roger Goodell should have final say over this discipline for off-field misconduct, and they're going to try every way they can to get him out of there. And the best way for them to do it, since the CBA doesn't expire till 2021, best way to do it might be to get a federal court to rule that Roger Goodell cannot hear these cases. So I expect both sides to fight this all the way, not just because of the Brady suspension, but because of the broader principle of who gets to be the final decision maker in these cases.
So how do they, both sides, go about creating a paper trail, so to speak, during this appeals hearing to set up some sort of legal case down the line? Is that something that they're keeping in the back of their mind every step of the way here today?
I think it's been in the front of their mind since day one. I think it's why you've seen the paper trail of letters going back and forth. I think you've seen the arguments in these letters were not just for the parties involved, certainly not just for the public, but to create a potential case on appeal in federal court. I think the league has been very careful. I think that's why they made the decision to hire Ted Wells to do the independent investigation, why they had Troy Vincent hand down the initial punishment, and then bring in Roger Goodell to hear the final appeal, to do away with the argument or try to diffuse the argument that the Players Association makes that it's unfair for the commissioner to be judge, jury, investigator, and executioner. Here, not that he's executing anyone, but here the NFL can say, all we did was bring in Roger Goodell to the very end. There is no conflict of interest. There is no bias. There is no prejudgment.
And technically, he didn't actually hand down these suspensions. This was Troy Vincent's punishment. So he is not judge and jury. He is, in this case, I suppose, the jury. Gabe Feldman, our NFL Network legal analyst. He will be with us throughout the hour. More from him on the way.